Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this fourth and final panel of the day of the Real Magic Hour program. It is the 8th annual edition of the Chelsea Film Festival that is presenting 130 films from 18 countries until Monday on Film Festival Plus. The link is going to be pasted shortly in the chat. And please support the arts and emerging filmmakers during this time. It is very important right now. For the past 5 years, we've been presenting this Real Magic Hour program, and that is supported by the Sundance Institute, to inform and educate ourselves about the business of entertainment. And I'm very happy to present to you this last panel of the day, Entertainment During a Pandemic. What have we learned from going virtual? I'd like to welcome our first guest. His name is Nigel Lopez-McBean. He's the co-founder and at DBP Donut with Mark and Jay Duplass. Our next guest is Paul Weber. He's a casting director and producer. And finally, Heather Ray, who is this year sitting on the jury of the Chelsea Film Festival and also a producer. And certainly, last but not least is our dear friend of the festival, Lon Haber, who is a film publicist and founder of Lon Haber and Company. I'm going to hand it over to you now, Lon.
Okay. So, shall we dive right in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now that we're okay. So, how have we all been going virtual? The first thing in the making of a movie or the whole process is pre-production, right? So during COVID, how has pre-production changed? How is it happening? And what different steps might you see being taken in order to get things done?
I can start. Yeah, it's we're kind of finding that it's a place of sort of continual learning and reevaluation at the moment. It's been really interesting what happens when you kind of take away that kind of immediate creative frisson that happens when you get people together. And it's been a really interesting experience. We're currently working on a piece of business that we won during the pandemic with a brand, and it's been kind of strange and fascinating at the same time to be basically going through a creative development process with people that I've never met physically, and trying to kind of guide yourself through that process and sort of understand what people actually like and want. It becomes kind of, it's different. I think that the one thing that I would say that's positive about that process is the speed and timing of things seems to be hugely condensed. So what used to represent like sort of creative development process now, I think we're almost running at like 50% of what it used to be, which I'm finding really positive, because it means we're getting to really interesting and fun places a lot quicker. But at the same time, it is a kind of like day-to-day challenge as well. And also from a people and person perspective as well, I think I've personally kind of got a little bit obsessed with sort of like empathy and just really sort of understanding how people feel through that process. Because the guy that you speak to today might not necessarily feel the same way tomorrow. And that's just the sort of nature of the way everyone's kind of living at the moment.
Yeah. Does anybody else, Paul, I mean, from casting perspectives? And
well, I echo what Nigel had said. From a casting perspective, it's not that I anticipated this to happen, obviously, but the last 2 projects I worked on before COVID hit, I had both projects, I cast them virtually, all through self-tapes. We did not do Zoom virtual auditions, which has been a huge improvement on the process. But because I was in LA, my producers were in Vancouver or New York and Connecticut, they were comfortable with the idea of not having particular sessions in LA because they couldn't be here. We were already in pre-production. So I had all the actors submit self-tapes along with their demo reels. And then we had specific Skype or Zoom callbacks and conversations with the director. And we hired all the actors. I didn't meet any of the actors personally, except the two leads in one of the productions where we had a chemistry lunch meeting. They were already hired, so they better damn well have chemistry. And of course, they're actors, so they created instant chemistry. It worked out. They were great. But I had not met those actors when I attached them to the project. They had not met each other. And that was the closest I could get to a talent meeting with them and the producer, who happened to be in LA. So we've been doing it for a while. I think now we have sort of supersized and created an environment where it's now operating actually pretty well. The Zoom audition virtual environment is happening. I try to look at it as a positive, and probably the way things will be proceeding from here on out. And I actually try to empower actors that I'm working with, along with their agents and managers, to let them know that this is an actually pretty good thing for actors to be able to make their auditions, show up at their appointment in the privacy of their own home, prepare, and not have to worry about making a live audition and dealing with some of the fear, anxiety, and rejection issues that actors deal with all the time. Anyway, God help us when we actually are able to get in the room. I hope actors still remember how to meet real producers and directors personally in the room, but we're doing it and it's working out okay. And thank God, again, we have the technology to do that. And I think it's just going to get better as time goes by.
You know, I mean, it's so interesting that you say that, and there's a common theme so far coming, how, like, you know, Nigel, you were talking about, we were kind of dabbling in this already for a while, and then all of a sudden, and we knew it was going to change, but we didn't know it was going to be this, perhaps.
Yeah.
And when I was acting more, I would be sending in tapes like 10, 15 years ago, and they would be like, well, we don't want, and eventually it came. And then when I worked for certain casting directors, they would be like, send your tape, have it be playing, let it go. And then Robin showed up. Is Robin here? Speaking of actors, or would you like, if we move on to Heather?
I'm here. I'm here.
Hi, Robin.
Hi. I'm in the strangest location because I was visiting with friends, lost track of the time, and I'm in Joni Mitchell's house.
Oh my God, that's amazing! The stained glass.
So,
That's
not where I expected I was going to be today when I was talking with you. So, nor did I expect to be this scruffy looking. So, apologies. But it's been too fantastic here. I mean, it's really like, anyway. Hi.
Hi.
So we're talking about auditioning via Zoom and stuff like that?
We're talking about pre-production during COVID and different steps being taken to make things happen. And,
okay.
Yeah. And Paul was talking about virtual acting, actors sending in tapes, not meeting people that you hire, but everything somehow working out.
Right.
And then you showed up and we saw the stained glass. It was very nice. You're in a special location.
I'm showing up for a very, very special location with some very special people, friends. You know, I'm somewhat, I suppose, in violation of some concept of COVID, except not, because all of us have been like so private and safe. So, but this is one of my first forays into like, let me see some friends. So that's also very exciting. And what a place to do it in. You can see there's a lot of wood. But we're talking, so I've had a couple Zoom auditions and the first was a sort of for me anyway, sort of disastrous feeling. Like I'm doing it right now, actually. I wish I could say I wasn't, but you get distracted by your own image in the corner. And that's not the way you want to feel when you're acting. So then the second one, I was smart enough to just get rid of my own box anywhere, which I'm not sure how to do on a phone, which is what I'm on now, but got rid of my own, because you see what happens is like, as right now, I'm like, what's going on with this right now with the hair and the glasses? You know, is this appropriate for a forum like this? Probably not, but here I am, you know, and those thoughts are going on. So you get rid of that as best you can, right? And Zoom does have functions like that, and it's important to use them. So you're not looking at yourself the whole time. And that one went better because I was sort of just in the room with the casting director. But everything's so weird right now. It's like, you know, things get put on inexplicable hold after they've held a round of auditions, and so you wait for a week, and what's happening? Oh, they you know, they may come back to it or they may not, you know, because there's some kind of sussing out on the part of the producers about whether, you know, things are about to go sort of more serious with lockdown, or whether, I mean, it's just it's a queasy time for people to book and work. So I think we have to have a sense of humor about it, because otherwise we're going to go crazy, right? Like, we just have to have a sense of humor about the total free fall. There's a great sketch on Saturday Night Live that was about this. I forget what the name of this doctor character was, that but just like, who knows, you know, I don't know. I don't know is the answer to every question. And that's what it feels like right now to be an actor. I don't know where the next job is going to come from. I don't know if something will start production and then shut down immediately thereafter. I don't know if my savings are going to run out. I don't know. And to sort of be in free fall with that seems like the best way to cope. A kind of the absurdity of life feeling, you know, like I guess if we have any advantage as actors in life in general, it's that our lives are not, they don't ever conform. They're not ever static, and the rules don't typically apply even in the best of times. You know, you're in work and then you're out of work, and right. So it's embracing the sense of free fall and trusting in some weird set of things that have not proven themselves trustworthy regularly over time to sort of take you through, and it's the only way to do it, I think. It doesn't count as advice really, but that's so
who knows, and maybe more things are, as everything landscape's changing, maybe all this is acceptable and you look great and this is the new this.
All this is acceptable, meaning what exactly? Like being at Joni Mitchell's house with friends when you're
being at Joni Mitchell's house, and the hair, and doing what you have to do, and be where you have to be, where you need to, when you need to.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it requires a more improvisatory spirit of all of us. And I don't know if you've been on those sets where improvisation is sort of the rule of the day, even if it's scripted, but they kind of want you to dance in and out of the words and just sort of be there. That's more what this time feels like, for sure, you know, and good work does come of that. I just want to always be seeing things done on Zoom as if it is an artistic medium, because it's not, you know. A friend of mine is a critic for the LA Times, Charlie McNulty, and, you know, he was lamenting recently that he has to see everything that the art is, you know, should we refine this as an art form? The answer is probably a resounding no, you know, like let's move on from Zoom as art, please, very quickly. But it's what we've got right now, I guess. And I have seen some interesting work. Richard Nelson's play was written for Zoom. You know, his I don't know if you followed that, but there are things that have been created with this in mind that are interesting, because the play itself speaks to the loneliness of this and the isolation. I think you have to acknowledge it, you know, that we're in a weird, I mean, I'm on my phone now, but typically I'm doing this on a computer, and it looks like you're in the Brady Bunch. It's absurd, you know. How do you make art out of that 20 different ways, you know? There's like one way, which is like, here I am in my box and there you are in your box. So,
And Heather, did you want to chime in from your end on, I mean, this is kind of leading into the next two questions.
Okay.
It's organically, if you want, but I don't want to interrupt if you want. I feel like I'm on The View right now. I don't know who, but it's because as the next question is, what are the biggest challenges in filmmaking right now, which is kind of what we're leading into. But why don't we let Heather have a say?
Well, hello everybody. I just want to say again, thank you so much to Chelsea Film Festival, to Ingrid, to Sonia, for everyone from their team for for the invitation to be a part of this week. It's been really a pleasure. I've also been on the jury with Robin, which has also been a pleasure. I'm zooming in from Los Angeles. I'm in the Valley, which is the Fernandinho Tataviam land. And the larger Los Angeles is Tongva, Kitch, and Chumash lands in terms of traditional territory. And I have been basically, here throughout this time of the pandemic and just managing with the projects that I'm involved with. One was a series that was set to begin filming in Calgary in April. And I was to be leaving on a Monday, and Friday got word like the border's closing, you're not going to Canada. That series is now, has regrouped itself and is in prep in New Mexico. And so we'll now be filming in New Mexico starting in January. And it's been an interesting time in terms of the development, because a lot of shows that have had these extra times for having been shut down, many of these series have now written all of their, they're done. They've written every episode of their show. So they're literally going into production, with the show effectively written, which I think is an interesting, a kind of luxury to have in some ways. And on the filmmaking front, what it has looked like for me has been a couple different things. I had 3 movies that were set to platform this spring. One that was set to open in theaters in March, a film called Bull, which stars Rob Morgan and was directed by Annie Silverstein. And that film premiered in Cannes last year, and it was opening theatrically this spring, which of course didn't happen. So it opened on, the digital platforms in May. It was also set to have its domestic premiere at South by Southwest, along with another film that I helped out on, which is a film called I'll Meet You There by a Pakistani-American filmmaker, Iram Parveen Bilal. And those 2 films were going to be playing at South by, which didn't happen. And then I have a third film that was also going to be premiering, another film that I helped on as an executive producer. And it was really interesting to see the journey for all 3 of these films and how they found their way, and that's really what each film has had to do, was just find its course, and of course correct, and then find its course. And that has presented really interesting challenges. And at the same time, I think of filmmakers as being some of the most resilient people in the world. I think storytellers are incredibly innovative and figure it out. Not that there weren't hearts that were broken. There's been a lot of hearts broken, in the face of all of this, aside from all of the tragedy of just the pandemic itself, and the people, those of us who have lost people in our lives and had our communities be impacted, and the depth of the economic impact and all of that. But even just as storytellers, I know a lot of projects who've just literally had their hearts broken. And that's hard to see, and at the same time, I feel like people have really taken this time to focus on development, which I have done as well. I've really, hunkered down with people that I'm collaborating with and found a way to really just make our material stronger, to be that much more practiced in terms of our pitches. Have sold a couple of things over Zoom, which is astonishing to me. I can't believe anybody could do that, but the buyers have to keep buying. So it's like there still has to be, it's an enterprise. There still has to be business, happening. So I feel like it has been, I think the great pause has been good in some ways. I think it's been good in terms of, people being able to slow down for an instant. It also has been good for the earth. She's really been able to heal herself. The ozone layer is actually healing. The air throughout the world is cleaning up, and effectively because of that, the water has gotten cleaner. And, I just think that there's things about it that have had value. But one of the things for me has been, I don't spend 4 to 5 or more hours a day driving around Los Angeles at this point. I'm home. I am creating, I'm having conversations like this, I'm having a day where I get to speak with people. I do have a pie in the oven, I want to be clear. So I'm also being productive in the kitchen. But it's just a matter of, we just have found other ways to express ourselves, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's amazing. Does anybody else have anything on the subject of sliding into the challenges and solutions and aspect of things?
Yeah, I think for a lot of independent producers, I mean, the big question at this point is to shoot or not to shoot, because the decision to kind of go ahead with the project now means something completely different now that it did in, say, February, for instance. And personally, we've really started to sort of reassess kind of where we work, how we work. I mean, personally, for the first time in a long, long time, we've actually turned down certain situations just because we didn't feel it was appropriate to put, our collaborators, friends, and people who we really respect and like in sort of certain situations at this time. So that's been really interesting. And also, again, from an independent producer perspective, I think that there's a combination of almost like legal issues, insurance issues, the ununiversal nature of healthcare, and all of that kind of leads you to a situation where you really need to kind of start thinking about what's important, and is this a project that's really worth taking those sort of risks. So a lot of the time we're kind of balancing our desire to help talent earn money and do what they do at this time with the human risk. And I think that's a really heavy thing to kind of have to balance at the moment. But it's definitely a consideration that we're having to have, every day, and take things on a sort of day by day basis.
Yeah. And as things are going back into production all over the place in different ways, it's very interesting to see what's happening.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really.
Yeah, and just actually what has been done, filmed during COVID, and has, and the way things have changed from, everybody wanting a theatrical release for their projects to Netflix having to buy a movie theater across from the Plaza Hotel so they could have 2 weeks in New York or 2 weeks in LA and actually remember they got all that guff. And now there's, the whole question of what, that's going to look like on the other side of things, how are we going to be watching everything, and when will we be in theaters, and shall we? And think people are doing a great job. I mean, Toronto did, in the drive-throughs, it's becoming special event in that way. But it also leads into, I think this is for everybody, is virtually made film really a possibility, if that's the case for a time? Yeah, I already sensed Robin's from earlier what your answer might be.
Well,
but is it? I'm not sure.
I mean, listen, what happens is, like, if it becomes that, then there will be an appetite for something other than that, and that will lead to something else. That is not going to satiate an appetite that I don't know if people recognize, culturally recognize here anymore, that we have, but that we have at a pretty deep level to connect with other humans. It's not like, oh, entertainment, the way it's always talked about. Oh, like, let's seek a new way to be entertained. It could either be this video game or it could be that television program. I think if we're too deprived of the real thing, like the real McCoy, which is actual human beings having actual, lived experiences in front of us, we'll try to find it in other ways, and I don't know what those will be, because it will depend on how. I know I am, as wacky as this may seem, I'm just so fed by being here in the company of a couple new humans. Like I'm so lit up by just even walking in the door. I was like, actual presence, my God, this is incredible, because I've been so deprived. Not that I'm not with somebody, but it's like our energy is familiar enough that you might as well be with yourself, because the terrain. It's the newness of it, and it's the experience of being around the energies of other people. Maybe there will be a fantastic renaissance in theater after this, once we can be in each other's company again, because we'll have been so deprived that that will just rush to those places once we can, you know? Whereas for a long time, theater, at least, you know, has become kind of a luxury for the rich, and people go to see plays to be like, you know, what did Brantley write about this one? Oh, it's a good one. I'm going to spend my money there, you know? You know, it's become a cultural event as opposed to what theater came out of originally, which is like a kind of a human need to have stories told and so on, you know? I mean, being made hungry for something is a good way to define what that thing even is. You kind of don't know what it is until you're hungry for it. When you're starving and you get actual nourishment, it's very different than if you're starving and you eat a Twinkie, you know? The Twinkie is not going to do it. It's not going to keep you alive. If you're starving and you get to have an actual meal, then you're like, oh, that's what an actual meal feels like. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, so we may get back to something that we've been missing culturally without even knowing we've been missing it and suffering the consequences of missing it this whole time, you know?
Yes.
You know, when because just pinballing off that a bit too, because we are in these, it's a cliche to say unprecedented times, so I will not say that again. But because of the times that we're in, the kinds of stories that will be told in theater and film and television are going to reflect that. And they're going to be spectacular stories, also against the backdrop of our politics and the cultural shifts happening. When this creativity is going to be unleashed, can you imagine what we're going to be? It will be an embarrassment of riches, if you want to call it that. But there will be incredible stories that are being written, prepared now to be shot, film, television, and film. How we've adapted, how I've been able to adapt, or the producers that I work with, we have shifted a couple of the projects that we had had further back in the queue to the front of the queue. One is a lovely film set in 1923 on the coast of Ireland. It's a relatively small cast. It's a female-driven film that we have been circling for a couple of years. Now that is on the forefront because it's such a powerful story at the right time, and we can shoot it in a way that is responsible. And another film that we never thought we were going to get to is on a glacier in Norway. You know, and it's a sort of a political thriller, and it's set on this island, and we're able to look at projects like that now and prep them in a way that talent will feel safer. Stories that are compelling can be told that may not have been told before. And so again, I try to look at these as positive developments at the same time, you know, recognizing how difficult this has been for all of us. We are just trying to adapt, and this is the way we're moving forward.
Yeah, we're being forced to find new ways to do everything, which artists have always been, you know, involved with. And, you know, and Heather was speaking about this pause that's like a gift we've been given, really. And then what Nigel was talking about, I mean, the whole panel, is everybody's had some time, though, to hone in on whatever Nigel was saying before, like, you have to be careful. What project am I going to choose? Now I'm really going to be discerning, sort of a thing, you know, depending. I mean, you know, I mean, that kind of goes in general, but so yeah, we've had this time, people have been able to hone in on skills, the quality and the content is perhaps becoming, you know, we really are on unprecedented times. I know it's hard that we need a new dictionary. That's another thing, but yeah, I mean, you know, for the rest, I mean, how do the rest of you feel about, you know, if virtual film was, and I know we're being able to film, like you were saying, we have locations but I mean, does anybody else have any thoughts on, you know, if we're in virtual land for a time, how possible is that? And what does it look like to you from your perspective?
It doesn't scare me I think it all depends on your background. I mean, my background was in sort of digital and social and gaming. So from my perspective, there's an awful lot of incredibly talented people who are now getting the ability to show the world exactly what they can do. Amazing. And certainly we're getting the opportunity to collaborate with people we possibly wouldn't have had the opportunity to do so because of what's happening now. And that's kind of exciting in a way. I think the talent and ideas thing at this time is really interesting because you know, the video conferencing as this has definitely made the world a much, much smaller place. And just from a somewhat purely personal and selfish perspective, you know, I grew up in the UK, spent 10 years of my career in Australia. My wife is a New Zealander, my mom lives in Jamaica, and I live in LA. That's always been a kind of impossible juggling act that now has never been easier. So weirdly, all of that stuff that used to be a bit of a negative and a bit of a pain to navigate, suddenly being in regular communication with people in 4 continents that do this has been an incredible advantage in terms of the share of ideas, moving things forward, approaches. It's all been really super interesting. And I have to say that having a New Zealander as a wife at this point has been incredible, because just to see what's going on over there and the way they've handled this situation, it's fair to say that the Film Commission in New Zealand is probably going to have 2 or 3 of the craziest years they could ever imagine. So it's just kind of opening the world up to kind of new faces, new places, new ideas, new approaches, which I think is kind of cool.
It's nice to hear the positive that's coming out.
Yeah, I can chime in on that too. I alluded to or mentioned that a writers group or a writer actor collective has formed. I sort of put out a call in March, and we've been meeting every weekend. And it is let's see, there's LA, New York, Vancouver, and London, and sometimes Paris, and sometimes Rome, all in the same room. And we have a time spread that works. You know, some are having their morning coffee, some are at the lunch hour, and some are having an evening glass of wine. So we raise our beverages, and they're all, you know, timestamp us. But basically, we're totally synchronized otherwise. And the work has been incredible. I mean, it's in this little bubble that's just us, which is where it belongs, because people are being brave and taking some risks, and it shouldn't be exposed. As a matter of fact, when I'm thinking, just being stream of consciousness here, I'm so used to a Zoom, a conversation being amongst the people that are having it only, that I think it's messed a bit with my awareness of, like, I have no idea how many people are watching this. I feel like I'm with a small group of you, you know, the sense of intimacy and being in a home. I mean, you know, there could be 5,000 people and I wouldn't know, you know, and I think that happened to me a bit the other night, where you're relating to what's really going on there. It's like such a gift to be able to be more private and more spread out at the same time, and to really choose your the people who for you are a source of light, and sort of arrange them into a constellation, you know, and everybody's glowing at each other from wherever and getting fed, because everybody's sort of chosen, and you don't have to go, oh shoot, so and so's in New York, or oh shoot, so and so's in the UK, you know. It's like you can go, this special one and then that special one, and let's pull them all together and see what we make. It's just fantastic, you know. So it's your own family, as was just said, but it's also your chosen family that you can relate to in this new way. There's a piece of positive news.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
That's super positive.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. How about for you, Heather? And I mean, this panel is doing the best job ever of segueing into questions that I don't even know if they know they know. It's just, I could show you. I lost my little stand, so I was trying to.
If there's a next question, let me know, and I can find my way
There is a
to
next question,
swim there. Yeah.
So we've gone into. Always hold your paper here, right, and deliver to. What have the changes in the strategies been? So wait. Well, no. What have been the changes in the strategies used to promote content? And
to promote content.
To get the awareness.
I may not be the best one to answer, because I sort of explained I was dealing with projects that were going into production, and 2 projects that were about to go to market. 3 projects that were about to go to market. So I will say, with the movie that I mentioned, Bull, which is a film that I was so excited for the world to see, and I was so excited it was going to be theatrical, it's the story takes place in southern Texas, in the Black Rodeo circuit of the American South. And it is just a world that is so rich and visual. And, I spent almost half a year in Texas, telling this story, and I just couldn't wait for the world to see it. And there were so many big plans we had. Like we were going to do a whole trail ride at South by Southwest, down through downtown Austin with all these different trail riding groups that were coming in from different parts of Texas and whatnot. And it just changed the dynamic of how we could introduce our story to the world. And, filmmakers are emotional beings, much like actors. Like we're wearing our hearts on our sleeves and ready to, to share our wares. And so it's really different when you're trying to do that through a virtual reality and not having the opportunity to have any contact, human contact with either your audiences, the people you're going to be engaging with, for people like critics to be able to see your movie in a theater at a film festival and actually experience what the energy that comes with an audience. I mean, it's a very different reality, That being said, we live most of our lives on these gadgets at this point anyways, or at least a good part of us do, we spend a lot of time with this machinery. So it isn't as though it's foreign to us, it's just that we're having to adjust. And I think that this is just my own opinion. I tend to think, perhaps in more philosophical ways, but I feel like it has been a good time for everyone, like I said, the great pause, for everyone to step back and just be thinking about things, thinking about our work, and making our work better. And I know a lot of folks who have just gone so much deeper into, studying craft, pursuing craft, finding ways to just strengthen ourselves in a development context. And I can't imagine what it'd be to try and market something right now. I mean, so many things have been put on hold for that very reason, is we're still figuring out the story, where we're still figuring out how are we going to promote things, are we literally going to, think of all of the kind of tentpole franchise films that just keep pushing, because everyone's trying to figure this out in real time, how to do this. And I think there's been a few films that have really, a film like Milan, for example, that Nikki Caro's film, that probably has really, that must have been incredibly hard for that entire team, to see a film that would have made a very big splash, and it still did, but it was just different, So I think that this is a year that is also about us doing other work, in my opinion, the work of what it is to be a human being, and be figuring out things and be really prioritizing our values and prioritizing who we are, to ourselves and with our families and our communities, whatever it may be. So I think that, again, it's not an exact answer to the question, but it's my own opinion about everything.
Right. And coming from a PR and a marketing perspective, there, some things are happening as usual, but it was, I think it was something, it was kind of like what Robin was saying, but it's when you find that meaningful aspect, you find that positive aspect, and you're glowing, and then the energy is sort of being shared. So the energy is, that energy level is rising between everybody. And it's, it's almost like every time we hear, okay, we have to do a Zoom thing. At the beginning, it was like, okay, cool, whatever. Now it's, and now you're like, oh, there's another one. So, and I actually did this. I was in charge of a Andover High School reunion that's not happening. And in front of 5,000, I don't know how many people, they said it might have to be virtual. And I literally went, that's going to be awful. But immediately after, what I realized was, how do you make that the most exciting, interesting experience ever? That's, we're doing it all in our industry, but that's,
Yeah, I want to, sorry, that just.
So the reaction is actually the opposite of what I had. It's like, okay, great. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just had an association with what you were saying. I didn't interrupt you, did I?
No, I interrupted you.
Oh, okay. I just want, sorry. I just want to make sure. So I'm friends with Patti LuPone, because we did a Broadway play together, and you know how she has mad crazy fans in the world, right? So a couple of friends of mine are crazy fans of hers, and I was just having a Zoom chat with a couple friends, and I shot Patty a text because they were going on and on about her, Patty this, Patty that, Patty. And I was like, you want to make a couple pals night? You know, here's a Zoom address. And she totally Zoom bombed our call. And it was one of these things where we were all sort of like so woebegone. And then in came Patty like an angel. And there was all of this laughter. And then we were also all sort of crying together because, you know, she was so, in a sense, ripped off of getting, you know, to do her amazing musical on Broadway. You know, I mean, it's just like, who knows when we return, if the timing will be right or what have you. And it was such a fantastic pulling together of like, you know, this marvelous diva who's also such a human being, just kind of like coming in and lifting everyone's spirits. And I mean, she's done that a bunch. I think she's been particularly generous with that, but it was so nice because it was just the four of us. And it was so special for those two people and then what's great is they took a screenshot right after she got off, and they'd been so awesome, like really grown up when she was on. And when she got off, they were like, you know, there was this kind of like mad ecstasy of like, you know, oh my God, we were just in a room with, you know. So I think it's very humanizing, and it you know, one thing this time has done pretty quick is scrub the patina off of the sort of dog and pony show aspect of Hollywood, you know, all of the sort of getting trussed up and secretly sort of trying to make other people envious of either your status or your good looks or whatever that's about. It's a big show, you know, and nobody's getting to do it. And it gets, you see people who are television personalities start out in their suits, you know, trying to do their persona at home. And then slowly they're like, hey guys, over time, they're just like, hey, how's it going? In a t-shirt and so on. And I like that about it, actually. So I thought I'd share that anecdote because it was such a joy, you know, so.
That's great.
Those things. I mean, those things are what keep you going, because there's a tremendous amount of death, corruption, uncertainty. This country's never, at least in an exposed way, been quite this corrupt, you know, just brazenly, blatantly, just, you know, I would have thought 4 years ago, never in the United States for so much of this stuff. And it can be so emotionally crippling to sort of feel like, wow, I'm in that country now. And then you find each other and you remember, you know, this American concept, the people, you know, we are the people. And there has to be some strength in that if we just keep getting together in a real way, you know, has to be.
That's wonderful.
That's my, you know,
100%.
battle hymn of the Republic. So
yeah. How about Nigel and Paul with your changes and strategies and positive findings and outcomes and getting your projects out?
Yeah, just thinking more. I think Heather said something that was really interesting, just talking about how the context of where we are now can basically have a disastrous effect on an idea or process or something that we're trying to build. And I think we're having a lot of conversations at the moment about, to call it content innovation, about how you can create in a way in which you can probably mitigate for what might come, either, you know, culturally, socially, in terms of the kind of talent you use, how you use them. Even thinking about from a promotional perspective, you know, if you develop an idea and the promotional aspect might be taken away from that, have you built the idea in such a way, and do you have the people involved in it that could make that idea promote and fly just on its own? Or could you use social media in an innovative way to push that idea? So there's a whole load of thinking and interesting stuff that's going on at the moment that I personally really enjoy. I think it's kind of, we're in a situation where we've now got lots of time to think, more time than we've ever had to collaborate. I think that access to people and ideas has never been easier or better. And personally, I've spent just a lot of time trying to kind of create a wider world outside of my own world. So probably for the last 6 months, I've spoken to people that ordinarily in the January, February LA world would have probably taken me 4 or 5 months to get half an hour in the room with. These are now people I can text and speak to probably tomorrow afternoon on a Zoom. So I think from a, as Robin says, from a kind of Hollywood, this business dog and pony show type perspective, if this whole nightmare leads us to a better, more collaborative, more open place, I think that's going to be a really, really special legacy, because I really love the idea that through this, we might kind of begin to really decentralize this industry from the traditional places which have always provided creative talent platforms, whether it's the Londons, the New Yorks or LAs. Those have always been the places that have provided the platform, but they've never been the places that have actually created the talent. So my big kind of thing is love to see more creative people, basically where they're from. You know, I want to see those stories. I want those feelings. I want the world to be opened up in a way. There's so many stories from so many places that we now, I think, possibly have the opportunity to hear about, develop, and execute in really interesting ways. That's my last positive spin.
That's so amazing. That's great. That's how it should be, I think. And Paul can cast the casting net across the whole globe.
Well, that's the thing that
I'm guessing.
again is a positive spin on all of this. I mean, we've been doing it for quite some time, but now, as Nigel had mentioned, you know, talent doesn't just live in major markets; it's everywhere, and all of the streaming services and co-productions that we are doing with international companies has opened up the world to us and has been, but I think it's easier in a sense now to connect this way. And also, I also think that, I mean, I try to look at this also in a positive way is, you know, we're so easily distracted and have been in the past. We procrastinate so easily. And this has forced us to be really focused in many ways, because we're not distracted. We're not going out to dinner. We're not doing these parties anymore. We're not going to these red carpet events. We're not, you know, we have had to sort of look inward and decide what's really important in terms of priority. And then there's no excuse in a sense to procrastinate, because there's nothing to do except to focus on what we're passionate about. So in a way, it's made actors focus more on their craft. Those of us who are in the creative world focus more on the projects that we want to be involved in and to see if there's a pathway to working on those, instead of pinballing off of one idea and then the next one, and then not being able to get a meeting for 6 months, and then, you know, a project drops. We're all sort of comfortable with the idea, at least not only figuratively, but literally, rolling up our sleeves, wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants, and kind of doing a workout with each other, and really feeling like there is no artifice anymore, that we're all in the same, we're maybe in different boats, but we're all trying to get to the same shore again, and trying to help each other out as much as we can in that purpose.
For sure. A couple of questions are coming through.
Yes, we have a couple of questions. So let's open up to the audience. Serena, Ryan, and Ethan Itzko, they're our guest filmmakers. They're waving. Maybe I can unmute them and then they can ask their questions. Why not?
Yeah. Cool.
Hi, good
Hi.
afternoon, everyone.
Thanks for taking the time to talk with all of us.
We were just very curious. We loved your ideas and your visions and hopes and dreams for what the industry is going to look like post-COVID in a growth oriented mindset. We're wondering what you think, if anything, will go back to normal afterwards. After maybe there's a vaccine, or after there's a treatment that allows a more traditional set environment.
Great question.
That is the question.
Yeah, I'm the least qualified to speak to this because I'm not on that side of it. But I guess I would say I'm drawn to that word you use, normal. Going back to normal, because there was something quite abnormal about the normal that we were in prior to this. Uh, it just may be there just may be a recalibration. I know I'm sort of not speaking to the practicalities of it. Once we're not severely dangerous to each other and social distancing isn't so necessary, I can see things resembling the way they were before, but I sure hope they don't just totally, snap back into what they were with all the status games and all the, BS that was going on. I hope that this has changed us somehow a little bit. And I hope, really fingers crossed that a new administration might change us in that way as well. This seems like a much more human prospect to have Biden Harris, if we do manage to pull that off somehow. And I think that will have a ripple effect down into the culture as well. If that were to happen, this sort of power oriented America firstism, all of that has bled into the entertainment industry big time. And it's reflected in our content, and it's reflected in the way that we the kinds of characters we gravitate to, the kind of stories we gravitate to, very, very violent, often very cruel, and I can imagine an entirely lovely new renaissance happening. Pray God, if things change at the top. So go back to normal was the thing I was responding to. I hope we don't go back to that normal myself.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree with Robin on that. I just think that, what used to be normal probably wasn't that great. I'd love to see just a greater respect for people across the board in this industry. I'd love to see the streamlining of getting to the word yes. That was always a traditionally tortuous process, which was ripe for reinvention. And I think the time to do that now. And I also think that the sort of indie filmmaker mindset is really going to become incredibly mainstream, because there's a whole army of people that always had to hustle and scrap and try and make their own way. And I think those are the people, those guys that are used to innovating and always thinking on their feet and having to deal with those kind of challenges that, sort of young filmmakers, time to do something, create and film different. I mean, you're never going to be people to content innovation, new ideas, different approaches. And I think, as I mentioned before, I really like the idea that there's a lot of people, those things don't come at the sort of same price point as a lot of the traditional filmmaking processes. So that sort of democratization and ease of access and all of that, I think that's the kind of world I'd like to go. That's the kind of normal that I'd like to go back to.
Yeah, I mean, I see us leading in that direction already. I mean, from a PR production, from an all sorts perspective, you see things happening, and so there is, but it's gonna be up to Serena and Ethan, pretty much. No, but see, yeah, it's like little did I, it turns out we're the sacrificial generation. I thought we were gonna change our thing, but it's I think I don't know if everybody agrees that it's also time, because I've been talking about this all week with film studios and independent filmmakers and everybody across the board, and people are getting things done, but the looming question is, when and what is that going to be? Although it's happening, like everybody's talking about, people are finding new ways. So that you might have to do that, but something is manifesting. And from my perspective, all I can say, it's time, and who's going to be at the top, making sure that everything that trickles around is operational, as efficient and whatever this new world is that everybody has to embrace, so that we can move into it perhaps.
We have one more questions before we wrap up. The question is coming from Colombia, the country I want to mention. My question is, can COVID-19 be considered an opportunity for the growth of the entertainment business?
I mean, I think we've been
Yes.
speaking to that. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
we
I mean,
spoke.
all of us have,
To
Yeah.
address that as the stories that we're going to be able to tell as a result of this. This is a historical time for all of us who have been fortunate or unfortunate enough to live in it. So there will be stories told from every country, from every perspective, from every corner of the world, and how COVID has hit diversities in different ways than mainstream. So I think there will be a huge renaissance of filmmaking and storytelling and playtelling because of this. And I think there are going to be some terribly sad stories and terribly hopeful stories told as well too. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes from this, because I think just we are creative beings and human nature will find a way, and we will adapt to COVID. And I'm not sure it's going away, but if it's not, I think we're going to be dealing with it as effectively as we can. And I think the entertainment industry, if our politics don't lead us there, I think the arts will.
well said.
Yeah. I also think that this is probably the first time that filmmaking and healthcare have been kind of inextricably linked in this way. And I think there's now enormous opportunity for those places, those countries, those production companies that are in places where they can guarantee the health of creative talent. And it's kind of really that simple. If you're in a situation where you were going to spend X amount of money on producing something, question is, where would you produce it right now? Would it be in the United States? Probably not. Where would it be? That's the kind of interesting question that I think that a lot of people in this industry are going to start to really play with.
Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you, Lon, for moderating this panel. Thank you, Nigel, Paul, Heather, and Robin. This was our final panel of the day before we actually have a cocktail hour, another Zoom also, of course. As Paul said, we're not meeting anybody. We're just doing cocktail hours and dinners through Zoom. So we have another one coming up with Paul Haggis, the Oscar winner Paul Haggis, in 30 minutes. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday. I know you have maybe a lot of things to do, and I really appreciated your time and your insight on this, because it also helps me as a producer, and I think it helps other filmmakers out there that are in the Zoom room today, and also on the stream, on the live stream on Film Festival Plus. I want to remind our audience members that please watch the films. We have 130 films so far. We've had a lot of viewers the past 3 days, and we want to keep up the level. The weekend is not over yet. You have until Monday to watch the films. So please support emerging filmmakers. It's filmfestivalplus.com. It's really easy to find, and I'll see you again soon. And thank you very much to all of you for joining. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.